Hey, what the hell is going on? How are you? Nick Digilio, that's me. Hey, thanks for checking out my YouTube channel. Please check out my Patreon channel as well. That's where you can donate some money to help out with keeping these videos coming and my reviews coming. I do a couple of podcasts. I do all kinds of other stuff, reviewing movies and telling stories and being goofy and all kinds of entertaining shit. Got a couple of channels here, YouTube, Patreon. Got a couple of podcasts. All for free, so if you can donate some dough, that'd be great. That would help out a lot, seriously. So if you got a few bucks laying around and you want to donate it, check me out at patreon.com/NickDShow. Patreon.com/NickDShow. Pick a tier, donate. There's some bonus stuff out there that we're going to be giving away and into the future and even more. So please, if you want to help out, you want to donate some stuff, you get some bonuses in the future. Help out today, patreon.com/NickDShow. Check out my podcasts as well on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network, radiomisfits.com. Podcast number 1 is the Nick D Podcast, which is an entertainment pop culture podcast where I co-host it with Esmeralda Leon, and we talk about life and pop culture, and I review movies and books and all kinds of cool stuff, and music and all kinds of great stuff. And then there's the Saturday Night Live podcast that I have called That Show Hasn't Been Funny in Years, which is a deep dive into 48 years of Saturday Night Live, which I've watched every episode of since the very beginning in 1975, and have this encyclopedic, ridiculous amount of trivia and knowledge in my head about SNL that I am sharing with you. So check out those two podcasts, That Show Hasn't Been Funny in Years, an SNL podcast, and the Nick D Podcast at radiomisfits.com. Please check them out. Thank you. And listen to me every Friday or so, every other Friday, I don't know, I'm on there a lot. I am the film critic for the Steve Cochran Show, Morning Drive, on Monday through Friday, 5:30 to 9 a.m., every Monday through Friday on WLS AM 890, the big 89. So you can listen to me review movies on the Steve Cochran Show on Fridays, WLS. So do all that, check me out, and give me some dough on Patreon. That'd be awesome if you did. Thank you. So I've been a movie critic for many years, and I've seen a lot of movies, and I've seen a lot of terrible movies. I've seen a lot of really terrible movies. In fact, I've seen some of the worst movies that any human being has ever had to sit through. I've sat through. I have seen some movies that will make your ass fall off. I've seen movies that are jaw-droppingly bad. I've seen movies that I sat in stunned silence at the end of several films going, oh my God, how the fuck did that movie get made? I have seen movies that are beyond awful. I have seen movies that most people would leave after the first 10 minutes. I have seen some of the worst movies that any human being has ever had to endure. I have seen bad movies. I mean, really, really, really terrible movies. That's part of the job of being a movie critic. And I've been a movie critic for like 37 years. And over those 37 years, I've seen a lot of unbelievably fucking shitty, terrible movies that you don't have to see. That's one of the perks of the job. Well, actually, not one of the perks. The only bad part of the job is that I see a bunch of shit that you don't have to bother to see, and then I tell you not to see it. That's one of the great things about my job is that I actually, over the many years that I've been doing this, I've saved people a ton of money by actually sitting through the shittiest, dumbest, most moronic, asinine, awful, inept movies ever made so you don't have to see them. That's my job. And I'm building up to this because I'm about to tell you about a movie that I saw last night, which is, in the 37 years I've been reviewing movies, at the top of the list, right near the top of the heap of the shittiest movies I've ever seen in my life. I saw a movie last night that is absolutely one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It is without question one of the worst movies ever fucking made. It is inept on every level. It is bad in every department. It is one of the worst fucking movies I've ever seen, and it's called Spinning Gold. Spinning Gold, which is the story of the creation of the incredibly successful Casablanca Records back in the 70s. So this movie, Spinning Gold, which is out now, it's in a lot of theaters, it's playing everywhere. It was backed by the family, the Bogart family being the descendants of the guy who, the founder and the guy who started Casablanca Records, Neil Bogart. So it is produced by that family and financed by that family, written and directed by the son of Neil Bogart. What's this jagoff's name again? Timothy Scott Bogart. So Neil Bogart, the subject of this movie, the founder of Casablanca Records, his son wrote and directed this movie. And it is, without question, one of the worst movies ever fucking made. Now, I always, I'm prone to hyperbole. People who know me know, like, everything is the greatest thing ever, or everything is the worst thing ever. That's just part of how I talk. And if you get offended by it or pissed off, oh, Nick says everything is, either the worst thing or the best thing, and you find it annoying, fuck off. That's the way I talk. You don't like it, blow me. But I'm prone to do that. I'm prone to say, that's the best thing I've ever seen, because when I love something, I love it. When I hate something, I hate it. I feel very passionately about things. I feel very passionately about life. If I drink something that I think tastes amazing, oh my God, that's the best thing I've ever tasted. If I eat something that I think is an incredible meal, oh my God, it's one of the greatest meals I've ever had. If I eat something that's shitty, it's one of the worst. That's just me. I speak in extremes and I feel very passionately about stuff. So if you don't find that, if you're not used to that with me, or you're like, oh, fuck off, then fuck off, okay? Because that's just me. Now, having said that, having set up the fact that I indeed do say, hey, that's the best thing ever, or that's the worst thing ever, when I say that Spinning Gold is the worst movie, one of the worst movies ever made, it's not just the Nick Digilio jargon. It's not just me being extreme Nick, best or worst ever thing. Spinning Gold is literally, to people who don't think like me, feel like me, or talk like me, literally, Spinning Gold is one of the worst movies ever made in the fucking history of cinema. It is The Room bad. You know The Room with Tommy Wiseau? Okay. It is Plan 9 from Outer Space bad. Okay? It is Santa Claus Conquers the Martians bad. It's Nicolas Cage's Wicker Man bad. It's Showgirls bad. It's Birdemic bad. It is literally one of the worst movies ever fucking made. On every level. A terrible script. Inept direction. Badly photographed. Every fucking cliche that you find in a showbiz / biopic is on display in fucking massive amounts in this movie. Every predictable cliche, every goddamn dumb, stupid, stereotypical shit that you see in a screenplay about showbiz or biopics or anything like that is right up front, in your face, and as base and as stupid and as laughably awful as you can possibly get. It's one of the worst scripts ever written. It's one of the worst directing jobs ever done. And it is unbelievably bad. Now, having said that, I laughed my fucking ass off during this movie. You're not supposed to. But the reason I bring up The Room, and the reason I bring up Plan 9 and The Wicker Man and Showgirls and all those movies is because those movies are so bad that they're hilarious. They have gone down in history as some of the worst but most entertaining, best, worst movie, that kind of like Troll, all of those fucking movies like Mac and Me. It's on that level, okay? All of those movies that I've mentioned are hilariously awful. They're so fucking stupid, ineptly done, jaw-droppingly stupid and bad. No talent shit that you can possibly imagine. Like, how the fuck did a movie this bad get made? How the fuck did a movie this stupid and so horribly put together get a release in a movie theater, and it's so bad that you laugh at it? It's so bad on every fucking level that you laugh at it. This movie, Spinning Gold, the story of Casablanca Records, is literally one of the worst movies ever made, and yet it's hilarious. This movie is so fucking bad on the level of all the movies that I mentioned, like The Room and Plan 9 and Santa Claus Conquers the Martians and all that stuff, that I'm telling you, 5 to 10 years from now, this goddamn movie will be shown at midnight in places like the Music Box Theater in Chicago and other venues that do that, maybe the Alamo Draft Houses and stuff like that. It will be a midnight show that people will show up to, drink, and laugh their asses off at just how unbelievably goddamn awful on every level this movie is. It is absolutely hilarious. I saw it with one other person in the theater in fucking Rosemont last night, at the Rosemont AMC. It was me and one other dude. And literally 4 minutes into the movie, I was like, oh my God. It is unbelievable. And I just, and as it kept going, and the fucking movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes long. So you're not, this is like an epic of shit. This is a shit epic. So, and as I sat there, me and some guy sitting like 6 rows behind me, I just started to like rub my head and go, how the fuck did this get made? It got made because nobody said no to this family, this rich family of the Bogarts. Like, they financed it, they put it together, and they got a ton of money, got a lot of throwaway. They'll let you know. In the movie, they let you know how much money the Bogart fucking family has. So they were allowed to do whatever they want and tell whatever story they wanted. And the story that they told, which is about the creation of the Casablanca Record Company, the most financially successful independent record label of all time. And that's true. And in the 70s, like the mid-70s, they started to get successful. From the mid to late 70s into the early 80s, they were the most successful independent label on the planet. Millions and millions and millions of records from Casablanca were being sold. They were at the height of the disc. They were right there during the disco phase, when disco was the biggest thing in the world. Casablanca Records was there. They were the label for a ton of artists, including Kiss. They were Kiss's label, and that, Kiss like put them over the top, including Donna Summer and all the disco stuff that they did. But Kiss was the big record. I remember when I was a kid, I was like, what's Casablanca? Oh my God, Casablanca, that's the record label that Kiss is on. So they became one of the hugest, most successful companies of all time, at a time when it was party time. It was the late 70s. It was drugs. It was disco. It was fucking. It was, it was doing all the crazy shit. And they signed a bunch of great artists and sold a ton of records. And they made millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of money. And then eventually Casablanca was sold to Polygram for an incredible amount of money that would keep everybody in the Bogart family rich forever. And that's what the story is. And again, this is a great story to tell. This is a great story. It's a great music story. It's a great business story. It's a great behind-the-scenes story. It's a great showbiz story about an independent label that was kind of made from nothing, that became one of the most popular and most profitable businesses and record labels in the history of music. So it's a great idea for a story, and the real-life story is great. What this movie is, though, is one of the most to put aside the raging, outrageous historical inaccuracies in this movie, the flat-out fucking lies in this movie, things that never ever happened, things that were so altered that in this movie that they seem to be taking place on Mars and not Earth. It's loaded with so much absolute, complete, made-up bullshit, lies. It is historically inaccurate in every fucking scene. There is at least one moment in each scene, that's a fucking lie, that is bullshit, that is exaggerated to the point of almost science fiction. It is a movie loaded in its 2 hours and 20 minutes with complete, absolute lies, utter fucking bullshit, and complete historical inaccuracies and misrepresentations. It is a film that has at least 26 lies every 4 minutes in it, if you want to count it. It is a bullshit movie. It's filled with lies. It's even more historically accurate than motherfucking Bohemian Rhapsody, and that's saying a lot. The movie is bullshit on every fucking level, and it's badly written, it's horribly directed, it's terribly acted. There are people in this movie that are talented. There are a lot of people in this movie that have done good stuff in the past that are doing the worst, most embarrassing work of their fucking careers. In addition to that, so it's basically like a love letter to his dad. So this is Timothy Scott Bogart. His dad was Neil Bogart, and it tells his story. And in fact, it's told from his point of view, where he's like being interviewed by the filmmakers, kind of. The setup is he's breaking the fourth wall by talking to the camera, which is us, the audience, but then he kind of refers to it as like, there's a documentary like writer in the room with him, so he's sometimes talking to them, sometimes he's talking directly to us. Anyway, he tells the story in flashback. Neil Bogart, the guy who started Casablanca Records, starting in with his life story about how he had a pop song in the 60s that was popular, and how he basically was part of the payola system where you would pay DJs to play singles, how he started Casablanca Records, how he signed all these big artists, how he stole big artists, blah, 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 how he was like millions and millions of dollars into debt. And the movie puts that up on the screen, like how much money they're in debt, and how he digs himself out of that hole and becomes the most successful man who runs a record label in the history of music. And it's done so in the most fucking annoying style that you can possibly imagine. Now, not only is this movie, like I said, literally one of the worst movies of all time. Like, I'm not kidding. It is literally one of the fucking worst movies of all time. And it, again, so bad, it's hilarious. Like, so inept and bad, like, to the point where you're like, how the fuck did this movie get made? It's hilarious. It's so fucking horrendous that you can't help but laugh at how fucking bad it is on every level. Like, really, seriously. So in addition to that, it is anchored by, quite possibly, the most annoying, irritating, asshole performance in the history of movies. This motherfucker, Jeremy Jordan, who has done a little TV and he's done some movies here and there. He's basically known as a Broadway actor. He's a stage guy. He can sing and all that shit. Jeremy Jordan, remember this name because this guy gives, I think, if I had to make a top 5 list of the worst performances in the motherfucking history of cinema, this motherfucker is right near the top. Jeremy Jordan. One of the worst actors I've ever seen in a movie in my motherfucking life. This performance that this idiot, Jeremy Jordan, is this motherfucker's name. Remember it, because he's going to go down in history as one of the worst actors in the history of any goddamn cinema ever. His performance in this movie is one of the most irritating, one of the most aggravating, one of the worst. Just every choice this guy makes is annoying. Every tick, every twerk, everything that he does, every single mannerism that he has, every choice that he makes, every look, every word, everything he does in this movie is wrong. Everything he does is inept. It is over the top sometimes. Sometimes it's just bad line reading. Sometimes it's just awful emoting. It's literally one of the worst performances I have ever seen in a movie. And he's the center of the movie. He's in every scene of the movie. He plays Neil Bogart. And in this movie that's supposed to be the writer-director's love letter to his dad, what he's actually done is he's unintentionally created one of the most hilarious portraits of an unbelievably annoying asshole prick dickhead that you could possibly imagine. He has successfully made his father look like a complete fucking asshole. Look like one of the most annoying, grating dickheads that's ever lived. And it's all thanks to the terrible script and the terrible direction. But this quintessentially, unbelievably, ineptly awful fucking performance by Jeremy Jordan. He is unbelievably bad in it. It is. I can't even tell you. And he's the fucking center of the movie. He talks to the camera. He breaks the fourth wall. The stuff that his character does in the movie is despicable. The things that he says, his relationships where he's got a wife and he's got a, he's having an affair. He's got a mistress and they're having kids and he does blow. And the first time he does blow, by the way, there's a scene in this movie where he does blow for the first time. It's the most, it's the most inaccurate and realistic portrayal of somebody doing blow for the first time you'll ever see. And he does it with George Clinton. Like George Clinton apparently in real life forces Neil Bogart to do blow, okay? In a scene where, by the way, Wiz Khalifa plays George Clinton in this. I'll get to that in a second, to the other stuff in a second. So in addition to having the most annoying lead character perhaps in film history, played by one of the worst actors I've ever seen in my life, Jeremy Jordan. By the way, I keep saying his name over and over again because I want you to remember this guy's name. Because he's literally going to go down in history as an actor who gave one of the most embarrassing acting performances in the world. One of the most embarrassing, awful, stinky, worst fucking laughably bad performances in the history of movies. Jeremy Jordan. Oh my God. So in addition to having an asshole as your lead character, played by a terrible actor, like beyond terrible, you also have historical inaccuracies of biblical proportions. The portrayals of the musicians that were associated with Casablanca are insulting. They range from downright lies, bullshit, to insulting, to hilariously inept, to, oh my God, unbelievably cliche, to the point where you're like, I can't believe they're going to go there with this cliche, and oh my God, they just did, and they went further than you could possibly imagine into the stupid zone. Some of the artists that worked with Casablanca are portrayed in this movie, and they are people like Gladys Knight and Donna Summer, Isley Brothers, and Bill Withers. And let me point those out because they worked with Casablanca before they were Casablanca, in the early days, and when he worked with Buddha Records, the label there. They recruited a lot of these black artists. And in every case, in the case of Gladys Knight, in the case of Donna Summer, in the case of the Isley Brothers, in the case of Bill Withers, Neil Bogart, who is as white as you can possibly imagine, is the guy who actually gives them the note that makes their songs good. So according to this movie, without Neil Bogart, Bill Withers, the Isley Brothers, Donna Summer, and Gladys Knight would not have soul. Without this Jewish white guy, okay? Without him, they wouldn't sound good. Like every scene in the movie is him going, it doesn't quite work. Why don't you try this? I'm a white guy. I'm going to show you how to do this. So the Isley Brothers are funky because of Neil Bogart. Donna Summer is sexy. Like he gets into the booth with her when they're recording Love to Love You and starts rubbing on her and telling her that she has to get on the floor and have an orgasm. And it's his idea. It was his idea to add grungy guitar to an Isley Brothers song. It was his idea to change Midnight Plane to Houston to a plane to a train, and it was his idea to go woo woo, and he gave notes to Gladys. He sang with Gladys. According to this movie, this white guy, this Neil Bogart jagoff, sang at a piano with Gladys Knight and like got the soul out of her. So according to this movie, not only is the movie filled with lies in terms of business stuff and to make this guy look, more genius than he really was in real life. But these black artists would not have soul without Neil Bogart. According to this movie, they would not be selling records, and they definitely would not be black enough. They definitely would not have enough soul unless, they were told and coached by the very white Neil Bogart. And that's just one of the many, many, many ridiculous and infuriating moments in the movie. There is another moment late in the movie with the village people that's fucking insulting. And then there's the whole Kiss subplot, which is unbelievably inaccurate and so full. I don't even know if Paul Stanley or Gene Simmons have made a statement about this. But this movie is, the Kiss portrayal, the writing of the song Beth, is, first of all, completely inaccurate and unbelievable. One of the most hilarious moments in the movie is the whole writing and performing and the reaction that Neil Bogart has about the song Beth, because it's apparently named after his wife who he was cheating, whatever. So there's that. There are the guys who play Kiss, the actors who play Kiss, who are fucking awful. The actor who plays Steven Tyler, who has like one line in the movie. It's completely historically inaccurate. Kiss is playing songs at the beginning of the movie that they didn't write for years after. So in the world of timelines of, when songs were written and when they were performed, completely inaccurate. Just throw any kind of historical accuracy out the window, like when songs were recorded, who sang them, when they did this, when they did. It's all bullshit. It's all like throw the shit at the wall. And the Kiss stuff is unbelievable. Like, it's unfucking believable. And every actor who plays any of the musicians are either wasted or terrible. There is a ton of music in this movie. Unfortunately, they don't play any of the original music, like the original recordings. It's all re-recorded for the movie in bad karaoke style. So they got the actors who are playing these characters, like your Gladys Knights and like your Gene Simmonses. All of the musicians and the singers that were a part of Casablanca are all re-recorded. All of that music is badly, poorly re-recorded in terms of audible stuff, in terms of musicianship, and in terms of singing performances. It's all badly re-recorded karaoke versions of great songs that actually were released by Casablanca. They also couldn't get the rights to the actual design of the makeup that Kiss has. So even that's wrong. So when you're watching the movie, and I was a Kiss fan when I was a kid. And I'm watching, I'm like, that's not Gene Simmons' makeup. None of the makeup, the four guys, none of it is the correct pattern. None of it is the real design. None of it is the actual Kiss makeup designs. None of it. It's all bullshit, and it just fits in with everything else that's completely wrong and off and historically laughably inaccurate about this unbelievable stinking piece of shit movie. So yeah, they couldn't even get the design of Kiss's makeup. They couldn't even get the rights to that to put in this movie. So it's karaoke versions of great songs that are terrible. It's the wrong Kiss makeup. It's actors and actresses who don't look, sound, or have any connection to the real artists they're playing. And the movie is filled with some of the worst performances you've ever seen. Again, anchored by Jeremy Jordan, perhaps the worst actor on the motherfucking planet right now. But here are some of the people that are in this movie. Michelle Monaghan, I don't know why she's in it. She's terrible. She plays the wife. Peyton List is in it, who plays like his mistress, who becomes his future lover. Jason Isaacs plays his father, who played Malfoy in the Harry Potter movies. He's terrible in it. Dan Fogler, who plays one of the guys who works for the record company, who is like the eccentric one. Dan Fogler, who you know probably most from Fantastic Beasts and some of his comedy work. One of the most annoying performances, second only to Jeremy Jordan, is Dan Fogler, who is fucking unbelievably, embarrassingly horrible in this movie. Like, jaw-droppingly bad, like trying so fucking desperately to be quirky and funny and in your face. It's one of the most annoying, funny performances I've ever seen. Dan Fogler, jag-off. It was always annoying, has always been annoying in his movies and in Fantastic Beasts and shit. He's the comic relief. He's kind of the chubby, weird-looking comic relief guy. Well, that's taken up and multiplied to the fucking nth degree in this movie to a performance that made me want to punch him repeatedly in the face every time he came on screen. Sebastian Maniscalco, stand-up comedian, very famous stand-up comedian, who's got a movie coming out with Robert De Niro soon that looks unbelievably horrible. Anyway, he plays fucking Giorgio Moroder in this movie, with an embarrassing wig and fake mustache. I swear to God, it looks like it looks like an Ed Wood movie. The costumes are awful. The wigs are terrible. I'm seriously, this is Ed Wood level badness. Wigs, fake mustaches, costumes, everything about this movie is like to the level of how the fuck are you wearing that wig? How are you doing that accent? It's that bad. Let's see, Vincent Pastore, Big Pussy. He plays a guy named Big Joey. Real stretch for him. He's Big Pussy. He shows up as the mafia who comes in and, beats up Neil Bogart at one point, making him reflect on his father, who also got beat up by the mob when he was a kid. It can't even. And then there are these guys. Jay Farrell, Michael Ian Black, and Chris Redd are in this movie. All three incredibly talented comedic performers. All three guys I like very, very much, who have done great work in the past in movies and on television. Jay Farrell, Chris Redd, both fantastic on SNL. Michael Ian Black, obviously, he's done great sketch comedy and a lot of really great stuff. And I'm not kidding when I say this. I'm almost positive that they thought that they were in an episode of Drunk History, because that's how they play it. That's the level of, especially Michael Ian Black, who plays Kiss's manager in this movie. His performance in this movie, again, bad fake mustache, bad hair, the whole thing. Like, I'm not kidding. Ed Wood style costumes, hair, makeup, mustaches. Really, it's that inept to the point where it's like, that thing's going to fall off this guy's head. It's that fucking bad. This movie is that fucking bad. Anyway, Michael Ian Black, I'm convinced he thought he signed on to do an episode of Drunk History, because that's the level that he's playing it. He's not playing it on any kind of realistic level. I think he read the script and went, how much are you going to pay me? Okay, I read this script. This script is an unbelievable pile of shit, so I am going to have fun with it. And Jay Farrell, Chris Redd, Michael Ian Black, they're all terrible in the movie, but I think they know it. And they're playing it as though they are in an episode of Drunk History. So the people that are in this movie, the actors that are in this movie, are either really, really terrible, lazy, don't give a fuck, or are playing it as a joke. And that weird schizophrenic acting style that's all thrown in, all these actors and actresses doing different things, thrown in with the fact that the movie is filled with karaoke versions of songs, historical inaccuracies that range from being insulting to complete, science fiction, to the point where there are bad wigs and bad mustaches, horrible accents, white guys turning black performers into soulful performers, and it is all put together and held together by, again, one of the worst lead performances, anchor performances in movie history, played by Jeremy Jordan. So the writer-director of this movie, Timothy Scott Bogart, has successfully made a love letter to his dad that is a portrait of a complete fucking asshole. That is one of the most ineptly made movies I've ever seen. So I'm telling you, it is. I think that's it. I got everything. It is seriously. I went in just thinking it was going to be bad. I thought it was just going to be a bad biopic, showbiz movie. I had heard bad things about it. It didn't get really a lot of good reviews. And yeah, so I went to the theater last night, me, one other guy sitting in the theater, the first Thursday night showing, 6 o'clock yesterday. And 15 minutes into the movie, I'm like, this is going to be, if this thing continues to be as bad, it's going to be one of the worst movies ever made. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. I don't think that should deter people from getting drunk and seeing it in a loaded theater at midnight 10 years from now when it is considered, you know, The Room bad. Like, for seriously, this Jeremy Jordan guy, he makes Tommy Wiseau from The Room look like fucking Laurence Olivier, okay? This movie makes, like, Plan 9 from Outer Space and makes The Room look like Citizen Kane. That's how bad this movie is. So, hilariously awful movie. If you want to have a great time, okay. You want to have a great time mocking how horrible a movie can be, because this is as horrible a movie as you'll ever see in your life. And it is hilarious on that level. It is the so bad it's good kind of movie. I don't want to use the word good because it's just a piece of shit, but it's so inept that you just have to laugh at its horribleness. So, if you want to have a great time mocking and making fun of an absolute large piece of shit movie, you can't do much better than Spinning Gold. It is literally one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life, and it is so hilariously awful. I'm telling you that we are going to be watching it in midnight shows for years to come. One of the worst movies ever made. And I was going to skip this movie. And I was like, nah, I think I'll go see it. I'm so glad I did, because it's so hilarious. So anyway, Spinning Gold. So bad, it's good. So awful, it's hilarious. One of the worst movies of all fucking time.